Senators have received an affidavit which contains new allegations against President Trump's pick for Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. Yesterday, the Republican-led Senate Armed Services Committee voted along party lines and sent his nomination to the full Senate for confirmation. Of course, that was before these new details emerged against Hegseth, a former Fox News host and military veteran. Joining us now, NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Julie Tsirkin, who has new reporting on this. Julie, tell us more about these allegations here.
Well, the allegations so far are in this affidavit that are being viewed by senators. They detail potential abuse that Samantha Hegseth experienced at the hands of Pete Hegseth. I want to be clear that we were in contact with Samantha, who is, of course, the second wife of Pete Hegseth, his ex-wife, who said that she has not experienced physical abuse at the hands of her ex-husband, who is now days away potentially from being confirmed by the Senate to be Trump's Secretary of Defense. It's a major position. There were questions about his qualification before all of these allegations came to light. We've been working on this for weeks. You'll remember that in his confirmation hearing last Tuesday, there was a moment in which the Republican chairman, Roger Wicker, entered into the record a document from his divorce with Samantha Hegseth in which both of them signed that they were not victims of any domestic abuse. In this case now, with the signed affidavit by Samantha Hegseth and Pete Hegseth's former sister-in-law, Danielle, she says that Samantha had told her that during the course of the marriage, Pete Hegseth would act in a way toward her that made her fear for her safety. Now, this is so fast developing. I want to tell you that Reid, who is the top Democrat in the Senate Armed Services Committee that has been handling his nomination, had sent a letter to Danielle Hegseth over the weekend asking her to detail any instances of abuse or any threatening behavior that she experienced. She says, by the way, in this signed affidavit, signed by her on the record that is currently being reviewed by senators, that she knows of some of these allegations to be true because of her personal interactions with Pete Hegseth, who she described as aggressive. St. Clay.
And Julie, what sort of reaction, you mentioned Reid, what kind of reaction are we hearing from senators?
Well, Republicans who are viewing this affidavit, I am told at least 5 of them have viewed this document already in a closed-door private setting. There are, of course, 2 versions. One of them is unredacted, and that is what senators are able to view. At least 5 of those senators who viewed it, there are still questions over whether they will go forward in supporting Pete Hegseth's nomination because of these allegations. Remember what we were hearing, anonymous smears from Hegseth, from his lawyer, telling us that these allegations are untrue because they were anonymous. This changes the game. Sure, it is Danielle Hegseth, it is an ex-sister-in-law, but at the same time, she's clearly somebody who was a confidant of Samantha Hegseth during this time, and we are starting to hear as well from Democrats. I spoke to Leader Schumer about this, who is the top Democrat in the Senate. He told me that he had a chance to talk to somebody directly who walked him through all of the allegations laid out in this affidavit. He didn't see it himself yet, but he says that these allegations are disturbing. Jack Reid gave us a statement exclusively this morning saying that they are so disturbing that he wants them to take a break, take a pause, and try and see, first of all, why none of this information made it into the FBI background check. We know that the FBI had interviewed Danielle Hegseth. We reported last week that none of this information or anything having to do with his ex-wives was in that report provided by Trump transition officials to senators who were considering his nomination. These are all questions that Democrats are asking, but Republicans are asking them too. And of course, that is key because Republicans control this chamber here, St. Clay.
And Julie, to that end, we know Republicans still control the Senate. We also know that Hegseth's initial performance in his public confirmation hearing was well received. So to that end, how might that impact things?
Well, yesterday they reported his nomination out of the committee on party line votes, 14-13. What that means is that now it's out of the hands of the committee that held that hearing that you're referring to. Now it goes to the full Senate floor for a vote. That vote, I'm told, could happen as early as Thursday. In the meeting yesterday, Democrats tried to hit pause, asking for at least a week so they could consider some of these new allegations that were beginning to swirl around. Republican Chairman Roger Wicker said no. They moved forward with the vote. As it stands now, the vote could happen as soon as Thursday, and then if a majority of Republican senators vote to confirm him, he will be Trump's Secretary of Defense, guys.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.